Well, folks, welcome to another episode of Rimshots with Sean, brought to you by Barstools and Bandtalk. And we have a humdinger tonight. Been talking to this man for a while. Mr. Greg Chaisson, Atomic Kings, Red Dragon Cartel, Badlands, bass player extraordinaire. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thanks, Sean.
And before we get started, you and I were texting a little while ago, and you have a very unique connection to the East Coast of Canada that I'd like you to kind of tell our viewers about.
Well, I was actually born in Canada. I was born in Toronto in 1853. Wait a minute, 1953. It just seems like 18. But my mother was born in Halifax, Nova Scotia, which is where you're at, I believe.
Absolutely.
And then my grandmother was from PEI. And if you're from the East Coast of Canada, you know what PEI means. If you don't, it means Prince Edward Island. Mm-hmm. And my father was born in St. John's, New Brunswick.
And so all very, we have members of this page that are all from that area. Have you ever been out this way?
Oh, yeah. I mean, when I was in Red Dragon, we played in Toronto in 2014, and we were supposed to go farther east, but the weather, it was snowing pretty good. It was in December. So I've never been to Nova Scotia. I would love to go.
Yeah, it's, and I said to you, and I mean, obviously you wouldn't remember, but if you ever figure out where your mom grew up, I'd love to get a picture for you for a keepsake, because that'd be pretty cool. The city here is growing so fast now.
Yeah.
And it's obviously a lot different than when your mom was here. So you have this new band. Well, I don't know if it's new. It's new to us. It might not be new to you. You've been posting little snippets of this band called Atomic Kings. Yeah. Killer material. Why don't you tell us about this band? Because you guys just signed a deal. Very exciting stuff. It just seems like everything's happening quick, but is that the case, or?
Well, the band's been together in this formation and with this name for about a year. We were another band, me and the drummer Jimmy Taft and the guitarist Ryan McKay had another band. For a number of reasons, we parted company with that singer. And then there was some drama that ensued over the name of the other band. So we just decided to change the name to Atomic Kings, kind of a fresh start. We added Ken Ronk to play. He plays harmonica and is a great singer, kind of I'm stumbling about here, kind of in the vein of Paul Rogers or even Ray Gillen from Badlands. So he fits what we're doing. Our music is very 70s, riff rock, blues based sort of thing, not unlike other bands I've been in. And it's really good kind of original material that covers a wide spectrum of 70s sort of influences.
I got the Badlands, a Bad Company influence right away. I mean, it was kind of that bluesy, almost like the English feel that, you used to have in the 70s where they came out. The videos that you guys are shooting now, those are very cool because I don't know if this is by design or whatever, but it kind of has that old kind of, I expect to see some girls on roller skates rolling up to the car windows with orders of different stuff. It's a real retro cool feel to it.
Well, the interesting part about the videos we've been posting is they were shot in front of the store that I run here in Phoenix, Arizona, Bizarre Guitar and Drum. And they do a street fair once a year in March, and they block off about a half mile of street, which kills my business. So we decided, okay, so we're not going to be busy. Let's set up out in the parking lot. We had never played a gig before. So for a gig, that was Atomic King's first gig. And we just set up there and played for about an hour, thinking that people would be going, it's too loud. And people loved it. No one complained about the volume, and we were really loud. Everyone liked the music. At any one time, there was probably 400 to 500 people camped right in front of us watching us play. And in the end, once we were done, so many people came up and were just blown away. They'd never heard of the band. They didn't know anything about me, and they were wanting to know, what are you guys doing? Do you have a record coming out? Do you have a record out? Where are you playing next? So it turned out to be a super positive thing. We just kind of did it as a lark. It was like at the last minute, let's just set up out here and play. And it ended up being probably one of the most happy accidents that ever happened as far as something that I was involved in. And the videos, people that have seen the videos have been very complimentary about what it is we do. So we're pretty excited about it.
Great lark, my brother, because I mean, like, again, it's I like the energy. It's really hard, I guess. Everything that's recorded now, to me, the new stuff really seems to be so processed and pro tooled, and there's that. It doesn't have that old analog feel. I heard the tunes, and it was like it sounded fresh in an old way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and that's actually by design. I mean, the generation I grew up in was analog. Almost every record I've ever played on was done analog. I mean, later on there was some digital stuff done, but I preferred an analog sort of vibe. We just signed a deal with a label out of Las Vegas called Tone House, and they are really into the style of music that we play. And we're going in the studio May 2nd, 3rd, and 4th to cut rhythm tracks. And we're going to try to do it as analog as we possibly can. I mean, it's hard to get away from Pro Tools anymore. Everyone does it.
Sure.
But rather than fix things with Pro Tools and move things around, I prefer that it's just done the old way. Badlands was recorded live and you got a clean take. You didn't cut tapes and you didn't, move stuff around. If you screwed it up, you went over and did it again. So I prefer that sort of fly by the seat of the pants sort of thing. Well,
in the next segment, I definitely want, because that first album in particular, hopefully you'll get tonight when we're talking, that album had a huge impact on people out here. It was just, I posted, I get, roped into one of those 10 and 10. And that album, every single person that I grew up with and I came up with cites that as one of the ones that were like, wow, it just came out. It was raw, but it was so cool. And we'll cover that in the next segment. So you guys are getting ready to start now. Do you think the fact that, who you are and what you've done, would have had any kind of play in Atomic Kings getting signed? Or you just think that, hey, you know what, the band made it on its own merit with the songs and the personnel and what have you?
I think it's kind of a combination of the two. I mean, it's hard to avoid what my resume is in the genre that we play in. A lot of people know Badlands and they know my history with it. So that certainly is a plus. But I believe that the material also speaks for itself. I mean, all of us contribute to the writing part of it, and it turns out to be what you've heard on some of the videos. Yep. So if we couldn't, it's kind of like if you're going to walk the walk, or, if you're going to talk the talk, you got to walk the walk. And we kind of feel like we do. A lot of people seem to be drawn to the kind of 70s vibe that we're doing. And I know a lot of bands purport to do that sort of thing, but we really kind of stick to that, partially because of, my musical upbringing was in the 70s. Our guitarist, Ryan McKay, is very 70s oriented. Ken Ronk, the singer, very 70s. Favorite singer is Paul Rogers. Mm-hmm. So it's hard to avoid what Paul Rogers did in Bad Company and Free. And Jimmy as well. I mean, our drummer, Jimmy Taft. It's nobody's drawing from a current influence. We're all drawing from the influences that we grew up with, and that happens to be from the 70s.
Well, I mean, what's old is new again, because that really seems to be the way that things are going. They're getting back to look, I'm one of those guys. The 90s for me wasn't an exciting time. I mean, I wasn't a grunge guy. Out here in Halifax, there's a band that started up that became a national iconic band that was a grunge band and pretty much killed the music scene that I was a part of out here. But that being said, it seems like we're away from that now. We're getting back to that whole, being able to play, being able to write, groovy, catchy songs. And hey, it's not a bad thing to have fun. And you know what I mean? Like that kind of era of, I'm successful and I hate it is kind of, seems to be moving away a little bit.
Well, that whole phony angst of the 90s where, we're anti-establishment. We don't want to do it for the money, but give us the money.
Right.
Is, not something that we're involved in as far as, what we do here in Atomic Kings. I mean, there's no money in it anyway. We'll end up spending more of our own money than we'll end up making. Right. But we kind of feel like the songs are worth putting out there and giving people an opportunity to like them. And if the response off the videos is any indication, I think we're correct.
Yeah, you're bang on with that. And we'll go back to Atomic Kings. How'd you guys come up with the name, by the way?
I came up with it. The previous band was called Kings of Dust, and I wanted to keep the name Kings, but I wanted something more powerful than Dust. So we sat around. It was almost called Atomic Dog, and we all liked that. And then one morning I woke up and I thought, Atomic Kings. We can keep, the Kings part of it and kind of keep a little bit of a, hold on what we had already created a little bit, and people would kind of maybe put two and two together. And, lo and behold, when we changed the name to Atomic Kings, it was almost 100% for people saying, wow, we like this name so much better. It's so much more powerful. The other name was good. This is so much better, and blah, blah, blah. So, we just were doing it to change it, to get a fresh start, and it ended up being a very positive thing. Actually, the whole time, this whole band thing with this band has been very positive.
And I like it. Now, you're expecting the album to come out roughly when do you think?
Well, we're shooting for the end of summer, end of August, beginning of September. And then, we wouldn't do any massive touring, but we would go out and do select dates, weekend dates, fly-in dates, that sort of thing. We've gotten some offers just from the videos. As a matter of fact, we're opening for Ace Frehley here in Phoenix on the 26th of April. And that is because the sound man of Ace Frehley saw one of the videos and said, wow, I really like this stuff. How would you like to open for Ace? And of course, that will be our first official show, at a venue as opposed to out in a parking lot. And we're looking forward to it. And the response to that situation has been very positive as well.
That'll be awesome. And we've had Matt Starr on the show. Matt's awesome. And if you see any of their tour, last bit, the band sounds great. I want to get into Red Dragon Cartel, but before I do, you posted, I don't know if it was today or yesterday, a really, really cool picture. And it was the brothers Chaisson.
Yeah.
And I knew about Kenny because I was a huge Keel fan. I didn't realize your other brother was in Tough, and then you had your other brother, the smart one. Family of bass players. I mean, that must have been something growing up.
Well, I always say that most people get to be the best bass player in their own family, but at my house, you had to fight for it.
Yeah.
I'm the oldest by a bit. Kenny's 10 years younger than me, and he's a great bass player. Todd, I think, is 13 years younger than me. And the reason that people didn't put together the connection between me and Todd, or me and Todd and Kenny, is because when Tough first came out, Todd used the last name Chase. So he just went by Chase. So people didn't put two and two together. And it's funny because I posted that picture yesterday, which I think was from like 83 or 84. And a lot of people commented, wow, I didn't know, I knew Kenny was your brother, didn't know Todd was. And now Todd uses the last name Chaisson. And he's a great bass player as well. I mean, he doesn't even really get to show what he's capable of as a bass player playing in Tough, because that musical genre doesn't lend to, playing the way I play, for example. So Todd actually is a very good melodic bass player, but he plays for the design that band is. Right.
Very kind of root notey and hold down the bottom end as opposed to riffing. And
now Mitch, my youngest brother in there, he's a cardiopulmonary technician, but he was never a musician, but he's 15 years younger than me. And that was taken in my apartment in California. I think Mitch might have been like 15, 16 years old. So since all four of us were there, we decided to grab him a bass as well and stick him in the picture. But yes, he was the smart one. I have another brother that's in Texas is not a musician. He's kind of a singer. And I had another brother, my brother Brad. He is not a musician. He wasn't a musician at all. But three of us, me, Kenny, and Todd, were definitely musicians. It's weird that we're all three bass players.
It's incredible. And I'm guessing you probably would have picked it up first and kind of would have trickled down from there. Is that an accurate statement?
Yeah, that's exactly how it happened. Is I was already playing, and then when Kenny got to be old enough, he would come to the gigs I was doing, and he would kind of be my roadie. so to speak. And then when he graduated from high school, I gave him a bass. And my parents were so happy about that. They were not thrilled.
Yeah.
And then after I went to LA, he came out a couple years later, and I kind of helped hook him up with Ron. And then Kenny was the bass player, I think, on the first, 6-7 Keel records. Great bass player, great on stage, really good guy. I still talk to him. He's an electrician. He's a commercial electrician here in Phoenix. So we see each other pretty frequently. Todd lives in Cleveland. He kind of got his start. He was a big Kiss freak, and they would dress up like Kiss and do these fake shows. And then kind of some of the guys that he did that with decided they really wanted to play for real. And Todd, I think, just gravitated towards the bass because he was closer in age to Kenny, and I think they would kind of talk about it. And I think Kenny had something to do with Todd becoming a bass player. By the time Todd became a bass player, I was already living in California, I think.
Right on. So, and I mean, I don't know how, you were mentioning that Todd is, a great player, but you don't get to hear him. Again, Keel, Dwayne Miller has become a good buddy of mine, and those first few albums that they did were great. Would you say Kenny and you are similar to style of player?
We're close. I would have said we're closer to style as players. Kenny's influences are very 70s. A lot of those bass players I grew up kind of emulating. Kenny also has done some of that. He doesn't play a lot anymore. He kind of just plays for his own enjoyment.
Right.
Todd, I wouldn't have thought that he was like me, but I was just talking to a friend of mine for his radio show in Cleveland, a guy named Mike Onesco. And he was rehearsing where Todd owns a bunch of food trucks with his, he has a business partner, Billy Morris, and they own a bunch of food trucks in Cleveland, Smoking Rock and Roll Barbecue. And check it out if you're in Cleveland. Mm. And he said that the player's bass was sitting there, and Todd picked it up and started playing it. And Mike Onesco said, "Oh man, you play just like Greg." And Todd said, "Well, yeah, he's one of my main influences, or however he put it." And hearing that, I wasn't aware of that. I didn't know that Todd kind of copped some of my, 10 pounds of bologna in a 2-pound bag sort of thing. But apparently he has. So I haven't talked to Todd lately. I'm kind of curious to talk to him now.
I'm glad you brought that saying up just before we go to Red Dragon Cartel. I remember being in a bookstore in Halifax, and Metal Edge was out, and there was an interview with you, and you were talking, you used that phrase, "There's no need to put 10 pounds of bologna in a 2-pound bag." And dare I say, I might owe you some royalties for that, because I've overused that phrase from like 1991 on. But when you said it, I was just like, it's the perfect saying for, those guys that get up there and do not play for the song. It's just, it's spot on.
You play for the song, but it's just a different approach to doing it. Ray used to use that phrase to describe me. He'd say, "Oh, there's Mr. 10 pounds of bologna in a 2-pound bag." And then Jake would say, "Not exactly."
Yeah.
But see, Jake's whole vibe was less is more, unless more is better.
Right.
And if you listen to guys like, a drummer like Ian Pace and early Deep Purple, he's all over the road, but It makes sense. Or if you listen to Mitch Mitchell, for example, in Hey Joe or Fire, those drum parts are every bit as important as Hendrix's guitar parts.
Right.
So I'm kind of influenced by a lot of those 70s guys, whether it's John Paul Jones or John Entwistle or Geezer or Mel Shocker from Grand Funk or Andy Fraser or Greg Ridley, especially Tim Bogert. And a lot of those guys in the 70s, all bass players played a busier style than what people currently play. And it was not considered overplaying. It was considered an integral part of the musical landscape, composition, construction, whatever. And so when I started playing with Badlands, Jake picked up on that vibe, and Jake's influences are very similar to mine. So he'd say, I'm kind of hearing blah, blah, blah here. And I know exactly what he was talking about. And then I could play a bass line that was kind of based around that vague idea.
Well, as a drummer, because I'm a drummer, and I always I love to joke around with bass players about different sort of things. I threw one at you the other day. But if I was to describe your playing, I would describe it as take charge. Like you're the guy that kind of, if you were to nail one foot down to the middle of the stage, you're going to basically fill the stage, but you're going to have that bottom end, and you're going to kind of drive the bus, which some bass players have that, some bass players don't. I've just always felt that's your style. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, I think so. Again, that kind of goes back to the 70s thing. A lot of those bass players did that sort of thing where they were kind of steering the ship in some ways. And, it's funny because when I played with Jake and Red Dragon Cartel, excuse me, one of the things he told me was, I never realized how important you were to what we did in Badlands till I got another bass player and he tried to play those songs.
Yep.
And I realized that, what the bass is doing there was probably every bit as important as what Ray was doing, or either Eric or Jeff, and even himself. And Jake doesn't give compliments very often, and that was a very nice compliment to have.
For sure.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Well, and I mean, he shared a stage with Bob Daisley, who I think you could probably agree, great songwriter, but kind of he's a pick guy, but I mean, he would be kind of that, very distinctive sound, very distinctive riffs in the songs. I mean, his playing when you hear him.
Oh, absolutely.
And you're cut from the same cloth.
Well, Bob and I are both very John Entwistle influenced.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of Entwistle with fingers, and he's kind of Entwistle with the pick. But Jake has always said that his two favorite bass players are, Bob and me. So I'm, if anyone wants to put me in the same sentence with Bob Daisley, I'm thrilled.
Yeah, well, there you go. I'll do it in a heartbeat, my friend. So, Red Dragon Cartel. So you explained to me why you left, but I guess you going in there was a no-brainer. You had that relationship with Jake. How was your time in that band? I mean, some cool stuff that they put out. And I told you I have a connection. You and I have a connection with Darren because I've known Darren for years. Talk to me about your experience in that band. Very cool band.
Jake had put out that first record, and they were touring with a guy that was a guitar player, and Jake was not happy with the bass presence. So they were going to play in Tempe, Arizona, which is by me. And he said, hey, he called me, which is odd because Jake never calls. He usually texts. But he called me and said, hey, would you be interested in doing this show? And I actually hadn't seen Jake in years and hadn't played with him since the early 90s. So I said, yeah, sure. So he came to town with Red Dragon Cartel a few days early. We found a place, we rehearsed, and went and did the show. And I had a really great time doing the show. We played Ozzy songs and Red Dragon Cartel songs and Badlands songs. So it was really cool. And after the gig, he said, hey, would you want to be in the band? And I said, well, I am committed. This was in March, I think. I said, I'm committed until the beginning of August with something that I used to teach baseball at a place in Phoenix, and they had summer camps, and I ran their summer camps for like 5 years. So I was already committed to doing it. And I said, but after that, come August 1st, if you still need a bass player, call me. So he would call me now and then from the road, and we would just chat about things. And then on August 1st, he said, well, I said, yeah, I'll do it. And one of the reasons I did it is because when we played together in Red Dragon Cartel for that one show, it was like no years were between us. Like we've been playing together all along. Jake's a big jamming guy. I'm a big jamming guy. So, Jake could make up a riff right there on the spot, or two or three riffs, and I'll sit right in there, and it's very comfortable for me. I enjoy playing with someone like that. So I joined the band. The other reason was my children were grown then, and I wanted them to see me on a national stage as opposed to playing in some cover band at a bar,
right.
And which I wasn't doing anyway. And so they got to kind of enjoy a little bit of that notoriety that me and Jake playing together again kind of brought. So I joined the band. It's a great band. I enjoyed Darren. He was my roommate on the road. The drummer, Jonas, great drummer. And then, of course, hanging out with Jake. We did about 40 shows over the course of maybe 2 months. And tour ended. Great time, great reception. Was like kind of a dream come true again to be back doing that. And was supposed to go on the road with them of April of 2015. And I was diagnosed with cancer. And so I had stage 4 tongue cancer. And which was weird because I was on the road with them in the winter and I was sick all the time. And I'm a health nut. I don't smoke. I don't drink. I don't do drugs. I've never smoked a joint, blah, blah, blah. And so, you know, I'm like a workout freak. And so all of a sudden I'm sick and getting sick on stage and kind of, you know, having like a exhaustion coming off stage, which is completely unlike me. Well, they found the cancer about a month before we were supposed to go on tour, or maybe a little bit even less than that. And they said, you can't go on tour. You're going to have your lymph nodes taken out. You're going to have all this radiation and chemo, or you're going to die. Because at the time they gave me 8 to 12 months to live.
Wow.
And my daughter was 16. And I said, yeah, my daughter's still in high school. I ain't going anywhere. Do what you have to do. So I did. And then, of course, one of the hardest things I ever did was tell my family I had cancer. My wife was there when the diagnosis was made. And hearing the sound that my children made when I told them I had cancer, I would never want to hear that. But one of the other hardest things was calling Jake up. I didn't tell him what I had when I first quit. I just said, hey, I can't do it. I got some other stuff I got to do. And he was like, well, you know, I thought we were going to do this all the way to the end. And I said, yeah, I just can't. Because I knew I was sick, but I just didn't know how sick. Well, then a couple of weeks later, by the time I had the diagnosis, and I called him and I said, before you hear this somewhere else on, you know, some website somewhere, I have stage 4 cancer and I have to do the treatment right now. And that's why I'm kind of going. And he got it. I mean, he wasn't happy that I couldn't play, but he also wasn't happy that I had cancer and that I had to go through the treatment. If I didn't, I would have got done the tour in October and probably died by March.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he was good with it. And he, you know, ended up getting Anthony Esposito, who does a really good job with them, and they're good friends. But Jake and I are still friends, and I'm grateful for the chance to play with them again in Red Dragon Cartel. And hopefully someday he and I will be able to do something again. We always had the joke that we'll have adjoining rocking chairs at the old folks home and we'll just sit there and play blues. So
yeah, you know, we need to see him out because he, you know, always one of my favorite guitar players. Just, I think a great writer.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, riff king, but you know, just a talent. And clean bill of health for you. You're totally
I finished my cancer treatment in October of 2015. And if you get past 5 years, which I have, they say that, you know, you're probably in pretty good shape. I'm kind of back to, you know, I'm still Mr. Workout. You know, a funny thing you mentioned about Jake, you know, great riff writer. People hear Atomic Kings and other things that I've done even prior to that. And they say, wow, you could write? And I'm like, yeah. And even as a matter of fact, Jake heard my solo record and he said, you wrote all this stuff? And I said, yeah. And why didn't you write any with us? Because I like the stuff you write. I mean, I don't have to write. I'm not one of those kind of guys that says, oh man, I got to write. I got to free the burden of this idea that I have. I don't care. If you want to write a song and you say, hey, Greg, can you write me some riffs by tomorrow? Yes, I can. But if you don't ever ask, if I wasn't in Atomic Kings right now, I wouldn't write anything. Because I can come up with it when I want to, but I don't have to do it. And I always enjoyed Jake's writing so much. And since I wrote all my own bass parts, it was kind of like getting to write anyway in the song. I mean, I did co-write some stuff with Badlands, obviously, but Jake's such a brilliant writer. I mean, that's one of the things about Atomic Kings is we kind of follow that same template, that same 70s template, drawing from all kinds of different inspirations. Ryan in Atomic Kings, great writer, very 70s, but kind of poppy. He kind of is a little bit more on the 70 hard rock poppy side. I come from the bluesier hard rock, riff rock side, you know, which is like, you know, very, you know, kind of Sabbathy in some ways and Deep Purple in others and Humble Pie in others. And then Jimmy kind of comes from this kind of almost Jeff Porcaro sort of drum thing. I mean, he gets Bonham and he gets Ian Pace and he gets all that, but he comes from it from a little bit more of a fusion-y sort of way, a little funkier. And then by the time you add Ken to it, who's very 70s as well. We lost the screen here, Jenny.
Oh, I can still hear you, Greg.
Hang on 1 second. Where'd you go? My wife. So by the time we all put it all together, it comes out Atomic King style, but it's very reminiscent of other things I've done that's 70s influence as well, which I enjoy. I don't think I'd do anything originally in original material unless it was something like this that I liked, so it makes it enjoyable.
I'm looking forward to seeing that album coming out, and we'll keep in touch, folks, with Greg, and as things come out, we'll make sure that everybody, because I tell you, there'll be a lot of people on this coast for sure that'll be really interested to hear that. Well, that was segment 1, man. Nothing to it. We come back for the next segment. We're going to cover maybe a little band called Badlands, maybe a couple other things.
I might have heard of them.
Yeah, that's right. You all right to sit tight for segment 2?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, folks, we're back after this.